I do want to get this LSU-Bama game. Obviously, LSU has to win it. They have to thread the needle, all the way out to be able to have a chance to make the college football playoff. And then with at least what we saw, the criteria being all over the place with the committee last night, who the hell really knows at the end. But when you're looking at this game, Matt, and something we've talked about, everybody's going to talk about strength versus strength. No surprise, and they should. LSU's offense versus Alabama's defense. But, man, I'm looking at the other side. The question becomes, if you're LSU, can you hold Alabama to field goals in the red zone? Because that's a win to me when you have the style of offense and the capability that LSU does have. And then from the Alabama standpoint, are you going to get 4 consistent quarters from the offense? Because Tennessee being a great example last week, it's been really up and down. When it's been bad, it's been pretty bad. When it's been good, it's been really good. They've hit explosive plays down the field. Is there a certain matchup that you're looking at that's kind of more intriguing to you?
Well, I mean, this is a game where the LSU offense has got to be basically perfect. I mean, they have to convert in the red zone, and they can't turn the ball over. I mean, one of the losses you mentioned was Florida State, and LSU put up more than 400 yards on Florida State. People forget this. They led by 3 at half. They had 2 possessions inside the 10 where they came away with no points. You've got to be able to convert touchdowns. But LSU's offense has certainly gotten much more dynamic since that opener. So that obviously – guys, I mean, this is going to be the same game we saw play out when LSU played Arkansas, Ole Miss, Missouri, that 3-game stretch where nobody stopped anybody. It was a 4-quarter game. Who had the ball last, and could you make a play in the 4th quarter? But, Jake, to your point, I do agree with LSU's defense. We've talked a lot about the injuries this week, and I'm not saying that they're insignificant, but even with those players, you weren't good defensively. I don't think LSU's magically going to find itself defensively and be great on the road in Tuscaloosa against Alabama, but I do think they can find a way to get a cup. Like if you assume 10 possessions a game and LSU gets 2 stops a half, can you hold Bama to 3 touchdowns, 3 field goals? And if they're somewhere in the mid-30s, can you score 40? Upper 30s or 40? I think that's probably how this game goes.
Yeah, I mean, on the periphery, I think you got to play perfect offensively and from a special teams standpoint. You can't give up any big plays on special teams that lead to touchdowns. You can't throw a pick six. You've got to be able to not get absolutely trounced in the penalty category, which Alabama hasn't been great there either. When it comes down to Harold Perkins, I'm already seeing people saying, oh, Harold Perkins needs to be a spy against Jalen Milroe the whole game. Some of the same people that were saying that LSU was, a couple nickels short of a dime for having Harold Perkins being a spy on Jordan Travis the whole time for Florida State. You've got to mix it up, right? You've got to give them different looks. If I say, Matt Moscona, you're in charge of the defense. Your name's already Matt, so we're halfway there. What are you doing with Harold Perkins?
I'm doing exactly what I've done with him the last 4 weeks. He has really settled in to that nickel Sam role.
Yeah.
And that's, guys, there's been 2 steadying things that have happened with this defense from when, like, that Ole Miss game. I don't know if people actually understand this. When LSU lost that game, they gave up 711 yards of offense. That is literally the most yardage an LSU team in 130 years of football has ever given up in a game. I mean, it was literally the worst defensive performance in the history of the program. Worse than when they gave up 500 or 600 yards passing to KJ Costello at Mississippi State back in the COVID year, who was then benched like 2 weeks later. Yeah. They've done 2 things since then. Number one, they switched to a true 4-3 defense, a 4-man front.
Yep.
And the most talented group on that defense is the defensive line, and that accentuates the D-line. That's number one. Number two is they put Perkins in that nickel Sam role. So instead of moving him around every game and having him learn a new role every game, you know where he's going to be. And it's caused the game to slow down for him. I agree with you. There's no way they spy him on Jalen Milroe every play. And guys, if you're actually watching Alabama, the biggest change they've made in the last month is Jalen Milroe isn't running.
He isn't.
They're using
he isn't, Matt.
He's not running.
We've talked about it every week.
His long run of the last 3 weeks, I believe, is 12 yards. And I mean, obviously the NCAA counts sack yardage against the rushing total for a quarterback, which is stupid. But they're not calling design runs for Jalen Milroe. Now, what you can have happen is the busted play where he breaks one for 70, right? But I don't think you need to live and commit the type of resource in Harold Perkins to saying just make sure Jalen Milroe doesn't run.
No, I agree 100% with that.
Matt, did the College Football Playoff Committee yesterday with their initial ranking make any decisions with their ordering that gives you concern, as we move later into the season
Literally
when they have
none.
to make their
Cone,
final?
I love you. Cone, I love you. I don't spend, and I would answer this question this way if it was you or Jesus asking me this question. I don't care one lick what that stupid committee did last night. Not a freaking ounce. Those stupid select committee ranking shows are nothing but garbage to fill up a TV window. It is hot, flaming garbage. The very first year ever of this playoff, I'll never forget the first ever ranking they did. Do you remember who were in the top 4? 3 teams from the SEC West: Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Auburn. You know how many in the world melted? The freaking college football world melted. 3 teams from one division. You know how many of those teams made the playoff? None.
Yeah.
None made the playoff. None of it matters. You know what else happened that year? That year, TCU going in the penultimate rankings was ranked number 2. They didn't play and dropped out of the ranking because the committee didn't want to have to deal with TCU and Baylor having the same record, them wanting TCU in, but Baylor having the head-to-head. So they said, we'll just throw you out and put Ohio State in after they beat a bad Wisconsin team. The committee is going to do whatever it wants after the championship Saturday. So I don't care about the rankings last night. I didn't even watch, Cone. I could not even tell you what they did last night. I have no idea. I'm sure, like we all expected, by the way, I'm sure we expected Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State, and Florida State. I guarantee you, without even looking at it, that's not how the 4 went, because they have to do something. Of course, because they have to do something. So, we looked at game control and defensive flow.
Yeah.
And, this team's strength of record against this team's defensive efficiency metric. And we got to go listen to Honey Boo Boo run up there on the stage with interview with Reese Davis, whoever does it. And it's a gigantic waste of time. Yeah. I completely refuse to give any of my life's attention to that stupid show until the one that actually matters.
Well, fair enough, but let me tell you why this could come into play, especially when we start talking about LSU down the stretch, because the Buckeyes were ranked number 1 yesterday, so you were right. They did do something that we weren't expecting with.
But FSU's 4.
But
there it is.
If we have another scenario like we had last year, which is quite possible, where the Buckeyes' only loss is at Michigan on the road, where that keeps them out of a conference championship. Now you'll have a 1-loss Buckeye team that didn't get to compete for the Big Ten championship on the outside, whereas this year, LSU sits here with 2 losses. They go into Tuscaloosa this weekend. We could have a situation where LSU wins the conference with 2 losses. I have a hard time believing the SEC champ is not going to make the college football playoff. That is something that we have never seen, but we also never have seen a 2-loss team make the college football playoff. If you're having to make decisions down the stretch between a 1-loss Buckeye team who didn't make a conference championship game, or say a 1-loss Oregon or Texas team that didn't make that lost in their conference championship, something like that, that's where the conversation gets interesting. I mean, can LSU, if they run the table here, make the college football playoff over some of these 1-loss teams?
Can they? Sure. But how many 1-loss teams are going to be sitting there that first week in December, Cone? That's the problem. Like, Oregon maybe takes another loss. What if, whichever Ohio State or Michigan is going to make the Big Ten championship game, one of them would obviously have a loss, and then the other might lose in the Big Ten. Well, then neither one of them is going to lose the Big Ten championship game, let's be honest. If you have an undefeated Big Ten champion, they're in. What if Florida State runs the table? I don't think a 2-loss Big 12 team is getting in. Mm-hmm. Is Kansas's win over Oklahoma, is that a terrible loss for OU so they don't get? I don't know. Like, I understand why we have the conversation, but nothing the committee did last night, Cone, I think gives any credence to what might happen at the beginning of December, because ultimately what they're going to do is whatever they want to do. They're going to order it however they want with no precedent. Like, the one thing, and I get so frustrated going through this every week in 2019, because there was a year where that 2019 LSU team was jumped by Cincinnati. And they talked about strength of schedule with Cincinnati as a reason that they jumped. And ultimately we saw what happened. It just doesn't matter. Like, they'll contradict themselves every single week and just make it work in the end, however they want to make it work. If LSU runs the table, wins out, finishes 10-2, beats an undefeated Georgia team, they have a great case to get in. But this is why we need an expanded playoff. Guys, like, this is the thing why I can't understand any college football fan that wouldn't love the opportunity to not have to have this conversation and actually go play real football games. Like, on-campus playoff games in December to decide all this, instead of letting these goons in a hotel ballroom in suburban Dallas make decisions on game control.
Yeah,
ADs and old former coaches kick rocks, man.
Yeah, I know. We need to find those two twins that Vegas has. Like, they got the avatar ponytails connected underneath the casino that gives them all the spreads and the over-unders.
The precogs?
Like that. Yeah, the precogs, definitely. It's like deja vu. But Matt, two things in. So the one thing I look for is there a criteria that is uniform that the committee is going to use? That's the main thing I get at. I don't care who is where. I care why they're there. But once again, and to your point, it seems as though the criteria is contradictory. You cannot sit here and say that this year, it's the only year that matters. That's why Ohio State's number 1 because of resume, and then put Florida State number 4 when Florida State has a better resume than both Michigan and Georgia. If you're going to be one way, be that way. You can't have it across the board. You can't sit here and tell me that head-to-head matters the most, right? And you put Oklahoma behind Texas, who they literally just beat within the last 3 weeks. So you're saying you don't think there really is any criteria. These people are just making decisions. Then my second thing, and to kind of wrap up before we get to Blaine, is that don't you think we're still, just like with the NCAA tournament in basketball that has 68 teams now, we still hear people complain if you're the 69th or the 70th or the 71st team or 72nd. Don't you think we're going to have this similar conversation even with a 12-team expanded playoff?
Of course, but I don't feel bad for teams 69, 70, 71.
Fair.
You made your bed, lay in it.
Fair.
I won't feel as bad for team 13, 14, 15 as I do for team 5 when here's a great example. Cohn will appreciate this. Was it 2016 when Penn State had a head-to-head win over Ohio State and won the Big Ten, and Penn State didn't get in the playoff, but Ohio State did?
Yeah.
I mean, what are we doing? That, and the other thing too, guys, is teams are allowed to improve as the season goes along. For the college football fan that says, well, college football is great because it's the only sport where every week is a playoff. You have been force-fed a pile of garbage your entire life. What you have is a regular season where it's literally the only sport in the history of mankind where you can win every game you play and not even have a chance to play for a playoff or to play for a championship. So no, loading up schedules with a bunch of directional schools and games that nobody wants to see is not good for college football. It's a money grab and it's a pile of trash. And I'm passionate about it because I love college football, just like y'all do. And this is going to be better for the sport. Like, give me more teams that are playing for something in November. You know what those games mean? It means a home game in December. It means making the playoff or getting a bye. All those things that give you a greater chance of winning a championship, but you're still going to play it out on the field. Why is it okay for literally every other sport in the history of mankind, but not college football? Oh, I know why. Because we've got old dudes in ugly blazers lining their pockets with bowl games that players finally realize are meaningless, so they don't even bother to show up.
Yep.
Also, I'm sweating.
Just one add-on.
I love it.
I agree with everything you just said about college football. I'm as passionate about it too. Just one little add-on, because the complete flip side of this, which I don't think football will ever get to because you can't play it more than once a week, is Major League Baseball. You know, where you can play 162 games in a season, be the best team, be a 104-win team. I'm not just talking about the Braves here, by the way. And then lose a best-of-5 series, a week later, and then all of a sudden you're knocked out because the pennant race doesn't mean anything. So you don't want to have, you want to create something in the middle there where you can't just lose the first week and you're all of a sudden out of championship contention, but also be the best team all year, and then you're knocked out because the playoffs become too inflated. Is just the point.
Well, I love when you bring up Major League Baseball right before I talk to Matt after what he did to the. But Matt, I want to get your opinion. I know we talked about CFP and the rankings, everything, about this whole Michigan scandal going on. What do you think of it? Do you think anything's going to come from it?
So to know if anything's going to come from it, Blaine, I'm just not informed well enough on the story to know what the University of Michigan may do, what the NCAA may do. I don't care that they were stealing signs at all. I don't care that they were buying tickets to game. I actually commend you.
That's what I said.
Like,
welcome to the SEC.
You're trying really hard. And I mean, I think what's been the most interesting thing of all this for me is to hear all the coaches and players who have come out since. This story has kind of given people cover to tell stories about when they had their signs stolen. I mean, Ed Ogeron, I think, told this story recently about the 2019 championship game against Clemson, where he told Steve Ensminger after LSU got down, like LSU had a couple of 3 and outs to start the game, and he's like, "Hey, change up our signs," and then boom, 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 LSU started scoring again. They thought maybe Clemson had stolen their signs. So, I mean, I don't know. I'm not levying any accusation against Clemson. It's just something that clearly coaches, even in a game, think is possible. So clearly, it's something that is widespread enough.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that we're picking on Michigan or whatever. I think it's really stupid that this guy was like knowing it's against the rules to go buy tickets in your name and like leaving a paper trail. Like, that's
on Venmo.
stupid.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. Like, at least like use a pseudonym, man. Respect, like wearing the sunglasses and the Central Michigan hat on the sideline. I mean, that's not exactly inconspicuous. Like, it's a night game and you're wearing sunglasses. We're all looking at you now, guy.
Yeah.
So I just think the way they went about it was kind of dumb, but I'm not mad at him for stealing signals.
Well, I can't wait to hear Dabo come out on his next radio call about you accusing him of cheating in the national.
Yeah. So Matt Moscona, you should just be grateful. You should just be grateful Dabo did what he did. Everybody there on YouTube, if you love college football, the NFL, sports in general, you're tired of it being so divisive, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. Really helps out the algorithm. We've really appreciated it. Over 100,000 subs. Can't say thanks enough. It's because of you guys spreading the word. Please keep doing it.